Oh, and then this Donald Trump is not a fascist, a leftist perspective. That looked interesting. This is only 10 minutes, so I might as well watch this next.
Well, he sure looks like one, don't he?
Because I'm the only other person I have seen who has really come out with this take as a leftist, you know. Let's see. Hi, Dirt. I am late as well. Is this analysis you were watching a sort of bad review of OG? Yeah, it is. It was. The cis were the guys with the battle droids. Not following. I don't remember that. I remember there was a thing where the Trade Federation was secretly being led by Senator Palpatine, who was actually Darth Sidious, and they had like battle droids. From what I remember in that first prequel. But I don't remember there being a cis in those movies. Anyway, let's take a look at this. The cis were the separatists? Cis Confederacy of Independent Systems. I don't remember that at all. To be honest, I don't remember that from Star Wars.
Here's his populist crowd, here's his uniform, here's his racism, here's his glorification of violence and militarism, here are his cronies, and here's his insurrection. And yet...
Wow, Giuliani's hair dye was really dripping down his face in that clip.
Verily do I say unto thee, Donald Trump is not a fascist. If you do a...
What was that fracture font there?
And yet verily do I say unto thee, Donald...
Not quite. It's black letter calligraphy for sure, but it doesn't look like fracture. There was some controversy about fracture, the Nazis not actually liking fracture. I don't know what that's about. Did they like it or didn't they? It seems like it could go either way. I don't know. We talk about the Nazis as if they're all one unified group. Certainly, I mean, I think I think it's often more appropriate to say Hitler this, Hitler that. And then there was, of course, his buddies like Himmler and Goering and Goebbels, who all kind of agreed with him because they had to, because nobody who didn't agree with him made it to that level. But then, you know, beyond them, I think there was probably a multiplicity of opinions, you know.
Donald Trump is not a fascist. If you do a quick what is fascism search on the YouTube, you'll be rewarded with a lot of people telling you that while fascism is real and observable, its central ideological tenets are, to loosely quote every single one of them, hard to pin down.
Yeah, this is the failure, I think, of political science, which is really shocking. It's actually kind of baffling to me how political scientists and philosophers have allowed the question of fascism to elude their grasp. So it's actually really easy to figure out what fascism is. You just read the Doctrine of Fascism. They tell you right there in plain fucking English. I mean, they translated it into English a long time ago. They tell it to you right there what fascism is all about. So it's weird to see how people have like had such a hard time and found the topic so elusive. I mean, even I did for a long time, just because trying to read the secondary literature about the subject. That's kind of what happens is like if you read all this secondary literature, then they just confuse you. They just get really confusing about it. I will say though that one lens of interpretation on the subject that you won't find in the doctrine of fascism is the whole military theory that I created. But I think that's really more of an ancillary way of looking at it. I mean, it does kind of get to the nut of it, but if you just want to see the core tenets of the philosophy, just read about it. It's there.
Hard to pin down.
And it's easy to see why. It seems that as soon as you nail down a concrete quality...
Let's see. Everyone took Echo's words on fascism as referring to actual fascism. That's why they're so unable to find. I don't think it's all Echo's fault, though. I think not just because he wasn't responsible for that, but I think this problem predates him. I think it goes back to the Marxists. You know, I think Trotsky offered his perspective, and it was stupid, and I mean, it wasn't entirely stupid, but it fundamentally, I think it might have been another Echo situation where he was using it for his own political purposes. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think the problem is that it's just they poisoned the well so much that nobody's interested. Nobody's actually curious about fascism. They just want to they want to dissect it like an autopsy instead of just like treating it as a thing, as a like respecting its autonomy and its ability to decide what it is for itself, you know. Instead of listening to it, they just want to read it like a fucking psychologist. And it's weird. It's like weirdly disrespectful for academia, which is what I don't get. I don't get why academia has to be like usually academia is pretty rigorous about how they approach topics. They have a standard of objectivity. Like they actually do care about putting research into their work, and they do put a lot of research into this stuff, but then they just they dance around the point so much, and it's like the point is right there. Just read the fucking manuscript. It's just right there. Like, why do we need all this junk around it to be the main focus when the main focus should be what they wrote? So all these fellow human beings were wrong to follow, and yet we are too smart to follow the same paths. I think we are too dumb to think either or. What? I have no idea what point you're making, really. But yeah, I just don't get it. Oh, shoot. I'm opening up Adobe Premiere. Ugh. Gotta wait for this to load so I can close it. It's annoying. Taskbars are annoying. You know what I hate is when you close something in a taskbar and then it moves all of the icons like a few seconds later, so that when you're trying to click on another icon, it moves. And so you click on something you didn't intend to anyway.
Quality of fascism common across all examples, another example comes in and cancels it out. Many fascist governments are white supremacists, but Italy, from where we get the name fascism in the first place, wasn't, at least in the beginning, and plenty of American fascists clearly see a place for non-whiteness in the national identity. Many fascist governments have imagery made up of strong graphics and primary imagery and are ruled by a dictator, but that's what North Korea does, and they're not fascist. Many fascist governments glorify war, but America does that, and no, we're not, on the whole, fascist. Yet. It's true, there is no household definition for fascism the way that there is for communism, but that doesn't mean it can't be described fairly comprehensively, which scholars have been doing for decades and continue to do to this day. This isn't an obscenity trial, we don't need to do the I know it when I see it thing. Any bored grad student quarantining in their parents' house with access to a big enough library can come up with an informed description of fascism. Let's try it now! Splicing together definitions from scholars of fascism Robert Paxton, Roger Griffin, George Mossey, Jason Stanley, and Hannah Arendt, and mixing in
the only one of those I know is Roger Griffin.
Primary documents from Italian fascist Giovanni Gentile and Hitler's resident legal scholar Karl
Gentile.
Schmidt, here's my working definition. Fascism is a revolutionary ultranationalism which seeks to reclaim and manifest the utopian glory of an imagined past by any means necessary, the perceived loss of which glory is understood to have
what about the state? What about the centrality of the state? That's like the main idea of fascism. Like, again, this shit where you're dancing around the point. Like, read what it says in the book. He lays it out perfectly clearly. It's about the centrality of the state as the supreme manifestation of the nation, and the nation lives entirely within the state, and vice versa. And nothing, everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. I mean, that is utterly central to fascism. And the fact that it's ignored so much is so weird to me. Because that, I think, informs everything else about fascism. This is what I'm talking about when I talk. Like, she's pulling from all these different academic sources, these secondary sources that should, by all rights, have the rigor to present this accurately. And I'm not saying that the things they're saying about fascism are wrong. I'm just saying they're not getting the point. When it seems so easy to me at this point in my life, after I've gone through all the deprogramming. After I've familiarized myself enough with the source. John Pyers says, greetings, Forever Dirt in chat. Yakushi says, do you think this autopsization of fascism arises from a sort of moralization of it, as if trying to understand it by its own lens somehow characterized a defense of it? I think that's a huge part of it, yes. I think that is. There's this weird lack of objectivity in the system where when describing a philosophy, which rightly any philosophy should be described by the people who invented it, when describing a philosophy, they ignore the words of the people who invented it. Or they don't ignore all of them. They just don't take their word for it. Like they look at the features of the things that they say and try to create some sort of a synthetic analysis of it based on all these things that they pull from different places, and like, oh, look at all these comparisons we can draw, and blah 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 blah. But it's stereotypes, a lot of it. I think it's stereotypes rather than being actual philosophy. Mark von Anand says, you can't trust, this in quotes, you can't trust a fascist to define fascism. That would be biased or something. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not biased when you're talking about the philosophy they invented. Like, it's their material. Like, if anybody has the objective imperative over this interpretation, it's the people who invented and proposed the philosophy in the first place. It's a weird kind of problem, and maybe I should make a video about this. I think this could be a good third video in the trilogy. In the fascism trilogy that I've made. The interpretation of fascism trilogy, we could call it. For that, I would actually like to finish reading James A. Gregor's book, Interpretations of Fascism. It's a kind of a boring book, which is why I haven't read much of it. But I think he would have an interesting perspective on it because he actually is one of the few academics who doesn't poison the well against fascism. Although, when you look into a little bit about him, you can kind of see why. Just watch the video. You watch the fucking video. You leave this stream and watch the video by yourself, you fucking asshole. Don't tell me to just watch the video. Fuck you. This is about me talking. This is what these streams are about. The videos are just here to facilitate me talking, okay? Carl 2 says, people are more focused on how the fascist acted as opposed to the written doctrine. Yes, yeah, and the issue with that is how they acted is not philosophy. Action and philosophy are two different things. So if you want to describe fascism as an ideology, which is basically another word for philosophy, it's a less, maybe a less elevated term for philosophy. So if you want to describe fascism as an ideology and you proclaim that that's your intention, then it doesn't make sense to look at their actions. Instead, you have to look at what they say. Now, you can compare that and contrast that to their actions to develop a theory for the practice of fascism. But this would be like taking the actions of North Korea and the Soviet Union and Cuba and China, Maoist China, and using those actions to define Marxism. When, any Marxist will tell you that, what a specific communist state does with its Marxist program is up to them. And you can't judge the philosophy, the core philosophy, based on the actions of some adherents. Let's keep going. Finally gonna watch the video. Yeah, we're playing the video now. Are you happy?
Been caused and is continually threatened by degrading outside forces.